Hi everybody, it's Jeremy here from the Damn Good Doctors Club. Today we're going to talk about cash flow and funnels. This is a down to business type video for health professionals. So we get a lot of questions in our group about cash flow. It's a big pain point for a lot of physicians. And I know this is something when people think about medical professionals, they think that they're all just filthy rich and all that and living in mansions and driving yachts around or something. But the reality is it's a business. And just like any other business, how well you manage that business will determine if you're able to make a good living from it. Not all physicians are just flush with cash. And I would actually venture to say that a lot of that has to do with not the skill set, because most physicians, like whether it's naturopath, functional medicine, Eastern medicine, MD, DO, like all kinds of training can have really good skill sets. A lot of times it comes into how you communicate and how you deliver your actual skill set. And this is a paradox. It's a big time paradox because you can have some of the best medical practices in the world and be sitting on the latent potential to help a lot of people. And believe me, I know how that feels to have a skill set that's not getting out because you haven't implemented the right kinds of systems. So today we're going to be talking about funnels, cash flow, and whether you're working online or you have a brick and mortar. Believe it or not, people think funnels is just an online term, but there are funnels that happen too with your brick and mortar, or if you're doing a hybrid. This will help open up some of the friction points so we can start to look at this model and get a sense of how are you getting your new patients? How are they finding you? How can we encourage that to happen better? And then what happens once they find you? Because the number one kind of misconception, it's not wrong, but it's incomplete, that most doctors and physicians have is, I need more new patients. When I talk to health professionals, that's one of their biggest, where do I get new patients? I need to have predictable new patients. So we're going to work on that today. Before we get started, this is YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of content. That way that you are the boss of the algorithm and not the other way around. You can train YouTube to show you more things that you like. So just hit the button and subscribe. And if this kind of content resonates with you, if you want to have these kinds of conversations, I would encourage you to get in our group. We have the Damn Good Doctors Club. We're having these kinds of conversations every single day. I'm sure if you hunt around, you'll be able to find the link. There might be a bit of a wait, but I'll get you in as soon as I can. So when it comes down to cash flow and funnels, cash flow comes from value. Okay, now there are business models that can help maximize your cash flow so that you're a lot less wasteful and you get paid a lot earlier so you don't have to worry about it, and then you can just focus on actually helping people, which is great to separate some of the business from the actual work of healing. I like that, to be honest with you. I like to have a good divide with that. So there are business models that can help to maximize that, but you got to remember that no business model, no matter how slick and spiffy it is going to fix garbage. If you don't have a viable way to help people, then you need to work on that, right? That's number one, because no matter how many new patients you can attract and have a sales process and all these cool funnels and retargeting emails and retargeting ads and all this stuff, right? No matter what you do, if somebody gets into your world and you're not actually effective whatsoever, and you can't help them, then your business isn't going to be looking good long-term as a health professional. I know this sounds obvious, but I've got to say it, right? Because we need that reality check to know that there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. So what I want to show you is a model. There are lots of models in terms of how to understand how people come into your world, what the process is like in terms of educating them, having them get to know you, how to develop know, like, and trust, which is where people get to know you and, maybe they like you and they start to trust you with the problem that they're trying to solve. This is something that is just business school. Like they don't teach this in most medical schools, but they should. But this is like business 101, just fundamentals, having that know, like, and trust factor, right? And then how they get into your world. And then eventually some will decide that they want to work with you. And there's a sales process, which doesn't have to be complicated or nasty or sleazy whatsoever. It can be very clean if you have good boundaries and integrity with your work. And then after that, you're going to deliver. You're going to deliver your help to them, your care. So we're going to take a look at this, and I'll give you a model that I learned. There's lots of ways to look at this, but one of my favorite ways is from a mentor of mine. And what we do is break it down into 4 stages. So we have, I'm just going to abbreviate here because we're going to run out of room on the board, but we have attraction, that's the A, and then we have conversion, and then we have the actual sale, and then we have the product fulfillment, right? Which could be your program or your services, whatever it is that you do. We're just going to call it product. We're using this is a very mechanical business type of parlance about it. So I'm all for more poetic flavor and stuff, but for this video, we're just going to keep it kind of cut and dry. Attraction, conversion, sales, product, right? There are lots of ways to look at this, but this is a very clean model. It's one of my favorite ways to break down this process. When you have a funnel, what people are trying to do with funnels, and what many try and fail with funnels, and some succeed. Okay, you can make money with this, you can run a good business with this, but it takes a lot. What they're trying to do is, they call it a funnel, right? Because you're going to have a big wide mouth that goes down. And I think a lot of people are familiar with this concept that you get all these new people, right? They call it new leads. This would be the business way to talk. Oh, it's a cold lead, right? A new lead coming in, right? And they come into your world and they start to get to know you a little bit. Some leave because they're not interested, and then some stay and they get to know you a little more. Some leave, some stay, they get to know you a little more. And eventually there's an offer where you have a decision point where they're going to buy your program or your product or whatever it is. And then they're in your world, and then you help them. And that's the idea with a funnel. Now, how these normally work with a funnel, with this kind of thing, is that you would have, for your attraction, for how new people are going to meet you, it would be, you can break it down into organic or paid. And you can do a lot of different things with this, but this would be our paid and our organic. And you might have things like Facebook posts, which can be organic. You can post them to your list, or you can pay to have Facebook show your posts to people. That's called an ad, right? A paid ad. So you could have like Facebook posts. You might have YouTube videos, right? You might have emails, all these kinds of things. You're basically trying to get people's attention. There are a little bit more advanced ways and kind of more sophisticated ways. You can do like a JV, which is basically where you have a partner and somebody who's got a big following, and then they have you kind of on their platform, and then their audience is exposed to you. Another one people are doing a lot is podcasts. I know I'm writing a lot of stuff in a small space, but that's basically the gist of it. And then what they try to do is then get people to sign up for some kind of lead magnet, which is like an ebook or some a report you wrote or something like that. Please join my 10-day weight loss challenge or something like that, which is, usually it's a good toe dip kind of thing. Anybody trying to lose weight, you're not going to lose, you're not going to get your beach body in 10 days, right? It's unrealistic, but it's a good toe dip to get somebody into your world. Or say, hey, I'm specialized in autoimmune conditions, so I'd like you to take my 6-day autoimmune eating challenge where we only eat non-inflammatory foods or something like that. All those little things, those are your little tripwires that once somebody goes across that, now they get the gift, whatever it is, your ebook or your challenge, whatever it is. And in return, you get usually their email address, or there are other ways to do this too, but typically you get their email. And now we've entered this different phase of the relationship where somebody's demonstrated interest in what you do a little bit, enough to give you their email address or something like that, right? And now we're in the conversion stage where your job is basically to educate them more and try to find out, if the person's going to stay in your funnel or if they're going to pop out. Now, I keep talking about the funnel, and I'm just going to tell you there's different ways to do this. What I'm showing you is the funnel model, which is kind of the prevailing thing with people working online. You can use these principles in your brick and mortar too, if you have a brick and mortar. But I will say that there are a lot of ways to upgrade this model and make it way less complicated. But what I'm showing you is kind of the standard, so we're all on the same page. So once they get their ebook or their challenge, their lead magnet basically, then you'll have the person now goes into your world of conversion and education. How that usually looks is they gave you their email address, and now comes the email drip campaign, right? So now we got email drip, where you are now in their inbox. Sometimes there are other ways to do it too, different types of models where maybe they're putting you in a Facebook group, like that kind of thing. You're gathering everybody up, going to a Facebook group, and then you can send them messages within the Facebook group or some other group, right? The platform doesn't really matter entirely. Now, before we move on, what about the people who didn't fall into the funnel, right? They saw your ad, they liked it a little bit, they watched some of your video or something like that. Well, you've got all these retargeting going on here too, where you can be kind of sending out more and more ads again and again and again to the same people. And it's basically like they haven't jumped into your funnel, but if you just, so so the thinking goes, and people do well with this, is that if you kind of keep slowly pressing your message and making more impressions, eventually somebody will start to take the hint that they need what you have, and then they'll go into your funnel, and now they can get into this process, right? And then eventually, if all goes well, fingers crossed, right, that they go into your email group, and then you can send them 10,000 emails for the same. It's the same process of email dripping. Is now like either somebody goes to the next phase of wanting to sign up for your program or your product or a consultation with you or whatever. And if they don't, they just keep getting that email drip, right, on loop. So now you can retarget cold people, you can retarget warm people, right? And just try to like keep adding some more well-intentioned noise into their life about what it is you do until hopefully they get so warm that they get hot. And then it's time for the actual sales process. Now, most often what happens with these sales processes is that we're looking at this call. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. Breakthrough session, strategy session, discovery call. I've done this model. I know how this goes. And I used to call them, breakthrough sessions, discovery calls. It's like you want to have a fun name for it, but at the end of the day, really the bones of this thing, it's not to trick anybody. It's not to trap anybody whatsoever, but it's a chance to get kind of one-on-one and talk to somebody who's thinking about working with you and ask them a lot of questions, and they ask you questions. And then you find out, is this person a good fit for what I do? And then they find out, is this the kind of person I want to work with? Can they help me, right? And they're going to have objections and questions and all kinds of things they're going to want to know. And that's usually what happens on a call, and it's usually one-to-one. Sometimes it's a Zoom call. I've done them on the phone. I've done them on Zoom. I used to run this model, and you can do them all different ways. So you can have these calls. And then typically what happens after that is the person's either not a good fit for what you do, in which case they kind of fall out of your funnel like right there, right before the decision time, before any money changes hands, or they are a good fit. And then with any luck, they sign up for your product, your program, your consulting, your coaching, your functional medicine framework, your Chinese herbal strategies, whatever it is that you're doing as a physician. That's ideal. So you can see what happens here is that a lot of times you've got a lot of weight being taken up here because you're trying to get this big volume of people kind of in your funnel, and you're expecting some to churn out, and you're expecting people to move kind of slowly because, surprise, your funnel isn't their top priority, right? What their top priority is their own life. So if your funnel and your messaging and all that doesn't really resonate, you're going to have a lot of people that are still cold, and they're not really interested in diving into your world that you're creating here. Because while you care a lot about your funnel and your world, the people you're trying to help, they've got their own priorities. We need to respect that, okay? We can see there's a lot of kind of repetition here. Okay, we're going to do some retargeting ads, and then the emails come, and then it's time to you've got to crank out a lot of emails. You better be writing those often, right? Making a lot of content. And then you got to figure out, okay, what's going on here, because which emails are converting. You can track that, what somebody clicks and all that, but you don't know really if that one email took somebody from 0 to 60, or if the other emails had built them up to where they were just ready to call and schedule a strategy call with you, and that last one just kind of pushed them over the edge. So it can be kind of hard to measure some of these metrics. And that was something I found interesting, because back when I was doing these types of funnels, I was trying to figure out what was working. And I found it to be kind of an assumption I was making that the last thing is what did it, when really it could have been the first thing or the third thing or a combination, because we're in a system that isn't just like a linear system of, reality doesn't work like that. So you'll find it's pretty top heavy here. And then as it gets here, you don't have to keep reminding people because they're already kind of interested or not. And you're getting to a decision point, which is good. But there's trouble along the way all over the place. So when you're relying on ads and things or one specific platform, you're a little bit fragile, because if Facebook decides to shut down your account, or you said a word that's a no-no word, and now everything got banned and censored and deleted, especially if you're in health, and especially if you're having integrity and pushing the envelope a little bit, you might find yourself bumping into some of the censored words and censored topics right now. Getting your shit shut down, right? So you got to be careful with that. And then when it comes to the emails, you just got to wonder, at some point, are people just parked on your email list, or do they actually care? And it can be kind of bad for morale to keep banging these things out unless you're getting a lot of people coming back. And then for the actual sales calls, you've got a whole other mountain of logistics, including the person has to show up at the time they picked. They got to remember that they're not driving in the car, yelling at their kids, out walking their dog, or just totally somewhere else. Their phone's dead, all these things. That's all got to line up. And then when they answer, they've got to remember that they actually scheduled the call, because it might be 2-3 days, it might be a week. I try to keep the call windows really short when I was doing it this way so that it was still kind of fresh. But even then, even a day later, people book a call and then, they've blocked out an hour of your time or something like that, and they don't even remember who you are. And you start thinking, what's going on with people? Well, what's going on with people is that maybe they were kind of going through the motions with some of this, and maybe some of the things that you were presenting didn't actually impact them the way you hoped. And they're just kind of scheduling a call for who knows why. Sometimes people just do it because they think there's going to be some other thing they can see after they hit that button, and they're just trying to get to the next thing. So you'll get that where the people aren't super committed to the call. Some are, which is great. And then you get on the call and now you've got a bunch of questions and objections, and basically you're going to be repeating yourself a lot, like explaining, okay, so what is this program you do? And you explain it. And you never really get that time back. So ultimately, some people say, yes, that's great, you're winning. But then if you factor it down and break down kind of your hourly rate, depending on your they call it your close rate, right? Like in business, like if you talk to 10 people on the phone, how many say yes and join your program? 20%, 30%, that's good. That's a fair amount. And if you're doing better than that, that's awesome. But the trouble is, even when you're doing well, like even if you're doing 50%, which is pretty good, that still means for every yes, you've heard a no. And that can get kind of draining on your morale. Really, I know we like to think we're above this kind of thing, but you can get kind of worn down where it's like, oh man, I've had 4 no's in a row. Well, if you've got 10 calls scheduled that day and the first 4 are the no's, maybe your last 5 are the yeses, but like you might not be bringing your A game, if you've been beaten down all morning by people who really had no intention of working with you anyway, or they were just bad fits and there wasn't good filtering. Like it can be rough. Okay. And then after that, now you got to get people in a program that's actually good, that does what it's supposed to do. And real programs grow and evolve. I know this firsthand. I make them. I've got one for my health side. I've got one for mentoring professionals, and they grow, they evolve. You've got to have that. You got to factor that in, because you don't want to build something. This evergreen thing, right, is like they say, oh, it's evergreen. This is a tree, in case you can't tell. It's evergreen. You build it once. You never have to do anything with it. You can just sell it over and over and over again. Well, that's great, except if you're doing anything remotely related to reality, because reality keeps changing and evolving, and there's always new things and new developments and new science and breakthrough stuff. I built a program in 2017 or 2018 based on microbiome. We were talking about microbiome. Nobody was talking about that at all. We were talking about glymphatic drainage. Nobody was talking about that at all. It was cutting edge stuff. Now, it's all over Instagram, it's all over Facebook. People are starting to get the hang of this whole glymphatic idea, the microbiome, right? There's a lot of things that start to become more and more common knowledge. So your cutting edge presentation is going to age. And if you want to stay sharp and you want to stay relevant, then this evergreen thing, you can't rely on that. And why I'm telling you this is because I want to prepare you. So, some people have gone this far. Some people are doing great with this model. And I'm going to qualify my statement here because I'm talking about cash flow and funnels. And if you've got a funnel that's working like this and it is humming along and you don't have any cash flow problems, great. Keep it how it is. And I'll show you how to substitute things in phases so you can make it easier where you have better quality of life. Don't destroy it if it's already working. But for those of you who haven't even gotten this far, to where this thing's humming along reliably, you're going to notice there's problems at every chunk of this. And one of the bottlenecks here, because initially we say, oh, I need more patients. And then you get them, and then they're not converting. And then you go, oh, I need better patients coming in. No, you need better conversion systems, right? You need to understand what the questions are. When I say conversion, I'm not talking about twisting somebody's arm and, tricking them into getting into your program. I'm talking about like really finding ways to really show up, where you can be so thorough and answer things to where people are like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Okay, oh, cool. Wow, they know their stuff. They've been doing it a while, right? Because you can show up and they can feel you. They can feel your presence because you care. You got to care. That's another prerequisite, right? Having a garbage product and also not caring. none of this is going to work, right? You can't offset all that. So as they go through, you're going to find, oh yeah, I need more patients. And then they start coming and you go, oh, I need better patients. And then you start to figure out that you need to actually be able to communicate better. And then it's like, now you get people on the phone and then it's like, I'm just not good on the phone. I need better sales skills. I just don't know how to handle these objections, right? And you learn as you go, and that's okay. It's normal. But then eventually you're going to get to the product time and you're going to go, man, my program's pretty good, but now that I got more people going through it, it needs an update. Unfortunately, I'm so busy screwing around with Facebook and trying to write the next 10,000 emails for my drip campaign. And when this is going well, I'm doing 10 sales calls a day. When am I going to do this? When am I going to build this thing? So then some of the advice that after that is like, okay, well, we'll scale it, right? We'll scale it. So you got to hire some sales reps. That means train them. That means you got people problems. There's a bunch of stuff going on with that. It's not that it can't be done at all. But what I'm going to say is that there are easier ways to do this. And this was a model that, like, you know, in 2017, 2018, it really started to kind of thrive online. And it was really all about getting that email address and now people on your mailing list. And now you want to get that call, right? And you know this going through it as a person on the internet. When you see something and it's like, oh, you know, download my whatever. And you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then you see it pops up and it's like, well, give me your email address first. And at this point, like, we're starting to get a little jaded to that. I don't know about you. I can't stand going in my email and seeing a bunch of stuff come up that I'm not interested in. And so for me as a professional, I never want to be on the other side of that. I don't want to be the guy sending out the emails that other people see and they're like, ugh. You know, I don't want to be out there with my hand out like their inbox is my begging bowl. You know, I'm just not interested. So a lot of people do this because they don't know there's any other way, which is, you know, fortunate that we can be creative and we can find other ways. This is a good foundation. You don't have to do this though. If it's working for you, you can plug in different pieces and start to change it over time to make it easier, or you can keep it how it is. If you've got a brick and mortar, just know all these things are happening. They're just happening mostly in real life. So for example, if you're brick and mortar, I'll work backwards. If your brick and mortar is that you have a functional medicine practice where you do in your office, you sit down with somebody, go over their labs, tell them, you know, oh, here's the nutrition you need to have, like all this stuff. That would be your product. It's not a program. It's not online. You just do it in the office. But it's still the same. The anatomy of this type of setup is still the same. You're going to have an initial consultation instead of a sales call, right? People come to the office, they shake your hand, they give you your paperwork, they say, here, you know, here's my problem. Can you help me? And you say, yeah. And they look at the diploma on the wall and, you know, you're wearing a nice shirt and whatever else. And they go, okay, this person seems legit. You answer their questions and then, you know, start the treatment, right? But we keep working backwards. Most clinics have a website. So now we're starting to get online, right? And in the old days, it would be like, instead of a website, you'd have a pamphlet, you know, go to the pinup board, right? This is the old way to do this, right? You go to the pinup board and you just stick your pamphlet there. But nowadays, everybody has a website basically. And if you don't have a website, then you're offloading the job of the website on your Instagram page or your Facebook or something, which points to your clinic in real life. And then outside of that, what are you doing for attraction, right? It used to be the analog way of living was just to throw business cards out, go to networking events and that kind of thing. And now we have, you know, you could be doing the same things here. You could have a YouTube channel, you could have a Facebook page, you could be doing a blog, you could be doing podcasts, like all these things to get people to come to your website to schedule an in-person visit for your local clinic. This is all the same. So what I want to do is I want to start taking the differences out because we're all doing the same stuff with the same anatomy. The bones are the same underneath, but it's how they connect. It's the physiology of how these things move. And that's where I think we can get some real benefits. So some people don't want to go online, which is fine as a practitioner, but you can use strategies and skills. Like as you get good at thinking about this stuff, you'll find that you can feed that back and you can really upgrade your processes of what you do in real life, which I think is very cool to take some of the stuff that's only possible because we have the internet and then bring it back to brick and mortar land and go, oh, I never would have thought of this, but it works great in brick and mortar land, right? Even though it kind of came from online ideas. So we have that. What I want to say here is that this funnel, you can sub out these pieces in a modular way and you can do different things. Just like your attraction could be Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, or you could be doing joint ventures all the time, or you could have a podcast or whatever it is. Whatever it is. Maybe you do a TED Talk and then that's how people find you. Maybe you go viral something like that. Maybe you're on TikTok and you're dancing around and talking about health problems. People find you that way, right? There's all kinds of ways that people can find you. So you can substitute in whatever method kind of suits your flavor the best. And it can be paid, it can be organic, it could be a mix of both. It's up to you. You could have your conversion however you want. You can put people in a Facebook group where they can get to know each other, get to know your work. You can use other chat apps. You can just keep people separated where you just email them singly and there's no mingling and mixing, right? You can do your sales calls one-on-one. Sometimes people do group sales calls where they'll get 6 or 10 prospects, right? That's what the business term of this would be. Somebody who's thinking about working with you, a potential patient. They get 6 or 10 potential patients on a call, and then they just answer all their questions as a group, which is cool, right? Cool idea. And then, some of them at the end are still in the funnel and interested, and they want to sign up. And then they just send them the links and they sign up, and then they start the program. Your program also can be whatever you want. You don't have to use these platforms like Kajabi and stuff like that. You can do all kinds of stuff. So it's going to be up to you and your own artistic expression. I've got my ways that work for me and that I think are elegant and very beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. And I think that also, it's a bit of a bias, but I think that helps the overall experience. So if you exclude my handwriting, right, everything else is pretty, like, we try to have some good aesthetics here, make it interesting, and that can help the experience. But what I want to say, that I'm going to say this twice so that we don't miss this, is that the funnel, all these steps of the funnel, they're containers. And what they're containers for is your communication and messaging. I'm going to say it again. All these pieces are containers for your communication and your messaging. So what does that mean? Well, you can build Facebook ads. You can build email campaign. You can design a sales call, strategy session, breakthrough session. You can design a program, but you're going to have to fill that up with content. You can't just send somebody a template. And you can feel that as a new patient, a prospective patient kind of coming around the top of that funnel. You can tell when somebody really knows their stuff. It comes through in the messaging. So what I would say is that all of this, which ultimately leads to two things. It leads to cash flow for the practitioner, and it leads to wildly amazing results for your patients, right? All of that comes from market research. Because market research is what gives us our messaging. It's what helps us. It's market research. Another way to, this is businessy, right? But another way to look at market research is just listening over time. Listening, paying attention. The better you are at listening, the better your cash flow, the better your client results, your patient results. I gave you the long way around. We went through a whole funnel. But what I want to show you is what the architecture of this thing, all these moving parts can be substituted out. And I believe we have better ways to do all this than what I've described here. But none of it's going to work if you don't have a skill set, your program's garbage, right? Or if you're putting bad messaging out, if you're putting out things that show that you don't know the people. So all it really takes, by the way, that's the fix for the product. If your program isn't working, more market research. You need to actually learn and figure out and go, okay, I'm going to just smash my brain into this problem until I've got it nailed, until I can solve these problems for people and with them, right, together. That's how you make this better. And you can go through lap after lap. And the more laps you do of this, the more you'll find actually things you learn on your sales calls can actually be quite valuable to start talking about up front in the very beginning of a relationship. But that's because you're doing market research, which also we could just call listening. Sincere listening with empathy, where you care, okay? That's the key. What I would say about this is that most of us are good listeners. The only thing is that we don't have systems built in here that interface market research, which is systematized listening. Just like you would structure a workout, right? Most of us we can move our bodies. But when you have a system and you go, okay, I go every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday to the gym. And when I get there, I do these warm-ups. I've got these exercises. This is my stretching. This is my cool down. Then I go home, I drink a sports drink. Like you get a thing, like a routine, right? And it's just, you systematize it, and then you're going to be better at it. You'll be more effective. And it's the same thing with market research. It's systematized listening. It's a way to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable so that we have systems in place, we have rules for ourselves, so that we know as we run our business, because being a health professional is a business, you're an entrepreneur, and that's something that's a whole different conversation. If the dollar sign is scary, like, oh, I don't touch, well, no, touch money, right? But have a good relationship around it. Don't be weird about it. Own the fact that you're in business, but that also means you need to own the skill sets, creating a good product, right? That will lead to the cash flow that keeps your business alive. Without cash flow, your business dies. You can't help anybody. Have to create a good product. Very hard to create a good product without a bunch of people going through it to give you feedback so you can iterate it. The more you do this, the more you'll learn. And then you're going to go lap after lap and go, okay, here's what I've learned about all the people I help. And now you look back at all your processes, right? Because they're not evergreen, right? It's not this. You look at all this and you go, okay, you know what? I think the messaging needs to change here because it's not exactly accurate. My product's evolving. I need to start explaining some of these distinctions earlier in the process so people know. When we get to this conversion part where they're learning about what I do and I'm educating people, I've actually found there are some common objections on these sales calls that it's just a simple misconception or misunderstanding about what it is we do here that I could clear up here with a blog post. Right? So you start looking and you go, okay, these systems need to be dynamic and alive. And just like a garden, if you don't take care of it, it's going to turn into a bunch of weeds. So make sure that no matter the best intentions, like, oh, I took a business course and they gave me some funnel templates. Great, but what goes in that template? What are you saying? Does it represent you? Does it represent your work? Does it represent the people that you serve? Do you have systems around market research, which is the upstream, right, of cash flow? I've got a cash flow problem. I don't get consistent patients. I've got cash flow. Yeah, I know it's a real problem and you need more patients. You do. And it's common. It's very common. And the answer is somewhere oblique, something you're not looking at, which is listening. I know it's counterintuitive, but when you start looking at a whole system, that's what comes up. So if this kind of conversation is helpful for you in your practice, you might think about joining our group. If you look around, you'll find the link and I'll try to get you in there. All right, so that's it. Jeremy, Damn Good Doctors Club. Cash flow and funnels. Get to work.